Greetings, Nick with Sweetwater here, and I'm honored to be joined today by Myles and Mark from Alter Bridge, and we're here to discuss the sacred art of making the most of two guitars on record, in the writing process, and also live. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us. How's everything going in this wonderful world in which we currently live?
Wonderful. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Great.
So,
It's good to be here.
obviously, the lockdown has changed touring schedules and everything else. What have you guys been doing to keep yourselves busy and sane during this time?
Myles, you want to go first?
Sure. Just been writing. I wrote. I started writing. We had a tour in. Let's see. We wrapped up at the end of February with Alter Bridge, and then this pandemic hit. So I started writing a record, and now I'm officially recording that record. So just staying busy, staying out of trouble.
Gotcha. So this is like taking a Myles Kennedy solo record then?
Yeah. That's
Oh, cool.
part two.
Part two, part ducks. You're a busy man, my friend. You're a busy man.
You know, just trying to make use of the time, have some fun.
How about you, Mark? What have you been up to?
Just the same thing. You know, it's I'll probably just be a couple months behind Myles. I'll probably hit the studio maybe November, December, and other than that, I pretty much painted my entire house. Tried to get, you know, with all this downtime, Lowe's stayed open, so I just keep on buying stuff to repair my house. And, that's about it.
Well, that's it's making most of the time nonetheless. That's good. And so another Tremonti. You have
paint this blue? No.
Oh, okay. So that's another thing you can do then.
Yes, I need to get to it.
So what's interesting about this conversation is obviously Creed was a one guitar band and Alter Bridge is a two guitar band. So Mark, how did that change your approach, both writing and performance wise? Did it alter things? No pun intended.
Yeah, you know, it did alter things. I see what you did there. You know, once we went that way with Alter Bridge, when we did the reunion with Creed, I couldn't do it with one guitar anymore. Once you go there, there's no going back. You know,
right.
To be able to go into a lead and have that support behind you. And me and Myles do a lot, you know, very different things when we play. When I'm holding down the meat and potatoes, rhythm, chunky stuff, he's doing a lot of the expressive, affected guitar stuff. So it's really creates big dynamic, you know, atmosphere that you couldn't do necessarily with one guitar.
Now, is that something you purposely aim for when writing then, or is that just a natural evolution of a riff once it gets written down?
I think it just depends on who's writing the riff. If it's either me or Myles writing it, sometimes we'll do something different than what the other guy's doing just to make it more interesting. And definitely has to be for the song, but for the main part, like I said, Myles usually does the what do we call it on the record, Myles? All the fairy dust, all the
sprinkles.
Sonic sprinkling.
Oh, we've just lost Myles. I guess Sonic.
I'm back.
Left.
Sonic sprinkling shut me down. It got me. I got censored.
Yeah. You must have breached a copyright there or a trademark or something. And what happens the other way around? So if Myles hits the initial riff, do you take over the Sonic sprinkles, Mark, or does it just flip flop?
You know, I just try to write something. Sometimes I'll just play whatever the riff is, but wherever we can make it dynamic and cool and different, we'll do our best to do that. But,
right.
Sometimes a riff is just too straightforward and too much of a hooky part to go away from too much. So I think it's a case by case basis. Yeah.
So sometimes unison is good. I noticed on the record a few times, like Mark will be playing. I'm assuming Mark's playing like a single note lead line or melody line, while Myles is keeping the meat and potatoes going, or is that vice versa? Like on a song for example, wouldn't you rather at the start of that there's a drone with a lead melody line, and then it develops to a riff and a melody line?
Yeah, that one. If I remember correctly, I think I start the drone. Or there's like the da na 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 na. That's me, and then Mark's going brow brow, and then we come in on the riff together, and then it goes to a melody, then I do that. So
Gotcha.
da, 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 kind of the hook. But once again, it really depends on the song. I mean, there are songs where we flip flop that approach, and Mark will do, like going back to their early days, like a song like "Buried Alive." Mark comes right in with a lead right out of the gate.
Right.
And so it depends, and I think that's something that we as time has gone on, we feel like it's one of the it's something that we try not to forget about, is the fact that we can mix it up and I guess keep it interesting, kind of always keep the fans guessing who's playing what.
Right. Well, you certainly you confused me there, or had me guessing anyway. Yeah, because that's the one thing people forget is, well, they don't forget, but they're reminded when they see Alter Bridge. Myles is not only a good rhythm guitar player, and so I'm speaking to you like you're not here, but you're also a damn good lead player. How difficult is that to split the role sometimes? Like, who's going to play what lead where?
We arm wrestle, and generally Mark wins that. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of times we do. We just write the record, and then it's Myles. It's kind of in Myles's court to give me vocal duties, and then it's in my court sometimes to give him guitar solos in the beginning. Now it's just kind of, sometimes you write a big, long, epic song, and there's two gaps where you could put solos. We just kind of split them up and pick our spots. And to be honest, though, in the past, sometimes I'll come up with a part. I'm like, I'm just not inspired with this solo section, and Myles will dive into it. Like on Isolation, I didn't like that solo break, and he jumped on it and made it great. So
cool.
Whoever it suits better will kind of take that part.
Gotcha. So once again, it's as Myles said earlier, it's all about for the song, what's right for the song.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, do you guys go in thinking, like, let me rephrase that. What two guitar bands influence both of you with regards this side of things, if there is one or two bands that do that?
Great question.
Thin Lizzy, that's a good two lead guitar band. Iron Maiden's a great triple threat.
Right.
I remember Queensryche back in the day had two lead guitar players. I remember seeing them in concert and being blown away that there was two guys in the band that could do guitar solos. Back then, when you're a kid, you don't realize. You think that that's the most absurd thing, that two lead guitar players in one band. But I think this band definitely has two lead guitar players, and me and Myles, and we're very different. Myles is very jazzy, bluesy, and I'm very, I grew up a metalhead, so
right.
Our styles are different. I think they kind of just make it a more dynamic pairing.
Now, your styles complement each other, and so do your tones as well. Is that a conscious thing? Do you steer clear of what each other are doing tonally wise, or it just something that's just who you are and that's what it is?
Yeah, that took for me. That was the challenge, because Mark had established, he had such a signature sound from back in the Creed days, and so when I came into the fold, I had to totally reapproach what I do, because I come from more of a kind of classic rock background as far as the kind of sound that I use.
Right.
So I remember going through a number of amps until we were in Blackbird. There was a studio, I don't know if it's still there or not, in Nashville, called Blackbird Studios, and they had a Diesel Herbert in somewhere hanging out in the studio, and we pulled that amp out, and it was like, finally, the amp that seems to sit with Mark's sound, because Mark uses a lot of real estate sonically, and for whatever reason, especially the top end on that Diesel, it really complemented what Mark was doing. So that's been recently I started integrating the VH4 as well, but Diesel seems to complement the Mark Tremonti, what he's using as far as his, walls. It's really a wall of sound. So it took some time to get that right on my end. Yeah,
because you had to find your niche, pun intended, I guess, within that sonic spectrum. And some people don't take that into account sometimes, that, the bigger a sound it is, the bigger one guy's sound is, the harder it is for the other guy to find a space without treading on them or just being redundant. So, well done.
Absolutely.
It sounds really good.
Thank you. Well, thank Diesel.
Right, yeah. Yeah, the VH4, both amps are great, the Herbert and the VH4. I love the VH4 because if you just set everything at 12 o'clock, it sounds really good. So
Right.
It's a great starting point. Now, when it comes to writing, do you guys write separately and then get together, or do you ever, you know, join together and go, let's write a song together, if that makes sense? When do you become one, if you will?
On this record, we wrote, I think this is the most separate writing we've done on an Alter Bridge record. We had this terribly short window for recording the record, so me and Myles had to go off to the races creating demos. So we came into the, hit the ground running. So I think each of us made about 7 or 8 demos, and then we went through them one by one and kind of cut the record down half and half with my songs and his songs, and then we kind of made them our songs together. Then we kind of played them as a band, and did what we do to each other's songs, but we just kind of had to do it. We had to be more prepared than ever, and I think it worked this time. Every time we do a record, we seem to do it a little differently every time, the creative process.
So I guess keeps you on your toes. Now, so once, say if Myles presents a demo, how much time do you guys spend crafting it and making it as one, like yours as opposed to his? How much time is generally spent before you start the recording process? Not just with you two, but with the other 2 guys in the band.
It's like a day a song about?
Yeah, about a day a song.
Gotcha.
If that.
Now, how important is it for you guys to for the creative juices to flow, to hit the studio with a song still fresh, so it's not over rehearsed, if you will? Is that ever a part of your equation?
Personally, I like that. I like there to be a bit of that initial spark and that spontaneity. I think that's the trick. I remember thinking that demoing for this last Alter Bridge record was to not overthink it and spend too much time on parts, because I wanted it to still be exciting. And I also knew that when we, the 4 of us got together and with Elvis, our producer, that they would start to take on a whole new life. So yeah, man, I think there's just something to be said about staying in the moment and not, beating a dead horse. Because sometimes those songs that you just, for whatever reason, you chase down and re-demo and change the melody over and over and change the lyric over, and then it loses that spark, that magic.
Right. Now, how often would say, I'll address this question to Mark, so how often has Myles actually changed the vibe of something you've presented by the way he approaches and plays it? Does that happen frequently? And I'll ask Myles the same question with regards Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think it always happens. Just joining, just having Alter Bridge sit down and play a song changes the vibe. It's almost like putting your song, if you write a song independently, then you kind of put it through the Alter Bridge filter, where it all of a sudden sounds like Alter Bridge when everybody else is involved.
Right.
So yeah, it's just this magical, Myles has his special pepper and I have my special salt, and everybody has their special ingredients.
So we've got salt, pepper, sprinkles. Yeah, it's like, so it really is a recipe kind of thing, which is kind of a good analogy, I guess.
Yeah.
Like trying to make something which is tasty musically.
Yeah. It's true. Like, I think there was a song I brought in years ago. I think it was on Fortress. There was a song called "Calm the Fire," and I remember hearing the guitar. Mark had this really cool guitar part that I never would have thought of, and once he put that on the top of it, and Elvis as well, we were both like, yeah, that just seals the deal right there. So that's the beauty of collaborating, especially collaborating with people that you trust.
Right.
We've been doing this for 16 years now, and so we there's that level of just, look, I know when I bring it in there, I don't have to stress about what's going to happen to it. It's just like, okay, it's going to go to the next level, and that's a wonderful thing as a writer. Right.
So you sort of throw it in the pot knowing it's going to come, with Mark's salt and your pepper, it's going to be.
Exactly.
Now, talking of Elvis has been with you for 5 of the 6 records. Is he effectively the 5th member of Alter Bridge at this point?
Yeah, he's our trusted comrade. He, like Myles said, when you get with a producer, you want to know that it's going to be better than you imagine when it's done.
Right.
We've gotten to the point now where we trust him so much that if you have a demo that you've made that you're absolutely in love with and you think it's the best thing you've ever recorded, it's going to be even better when it goes through that finer filter of recording with Jeff and Elvis. And it's always been, he's the most rock solid producer we could ever ask for.
Does he actually get involved with suggesting certain things like say, you know, Mark's playing this inversion, why don't you play this inversion? Does he get that deep, or is it more like a sonic thing he does?
Well, he'll tell us if he likes a part or not. You know, he'll say, I love the song, but the bridge is kind of, you know, let's not go on down the rabbit hole on this bridge. The song needs to be more direct or something. And then me and Myles will go into our dark rooms for a few hours and figure out what needs to be done and bring it to the band.
Gotcha, gotcha. And when you guys are writing, how much does the vocal melody determine where the guitar goes, or is it vice versa, if that makes sense? Will something Myles sings on one of your riffs alter your thinking on the bridge because of where his vocal might imply it should go?
Depends on who writes the part. You know, a lot of times my guitar parts will, if I'm singing a melody, it'll be, sometimes the guitar part is the best melody. You never,
right.
Sometimes right there in front of you, but I don't know what Myles thinks.
Yeah. I mean, for Mark and I both, I think that was something that initially we were. I wasn't sure, you know, when I first started working with Mark, what his theory on songwriting was, you know, and I came to learn that he's in the same camp that I come from, which is melody is paramount. You know, it's all about that melody, and so we tried whatever it takes to make sure that the melody is front center, and you know, we build around that. That's really important to us.
Do you ever find yourself writing a really good riff and then stripping the riff back so it doesn't step on the melody once the vocal starts?
Sometimes you have to do that because
right.
You can't sing and play that riff. You know,
yeah, there is, unless you're Dave Mustaine, I guess. Or
yeah. You know, one thing that Elvis does that is kind of makes things life difficult for guys like me and Myles is you'll record a song like you've done your demo, and then when you go over final vocal tracking, he'll say, you know, there's a 10-second gap here. You should put some vocal on here. And Myles will improvise a vocal, then it gets to the live thing. It's impossible. You can't
absolutely
sing and play it, and you don't realize it until you're listening to your final mixes.
Gotcha. So he is pretty instrumental. So I guess he's like cayenne pepper or something.
Yes, he's the oregano.
Now, there's another weird question, but I think it'll make sense. Do you ever find if one of you presents a riff, when the other guy plays it, even though he's playing it the same, it sounds different because of your stylistic and sonic differences? Does it ever change the flavor?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I play like a caveman.
Very different.
I'm sorry, what was that? Sorry?
I play like a caveman, and Myles plays more of like a sophisticated player. So we, you know, I'm the brutish player, and he's the, you know, like I said, the more loose, jazzy kind of guy.
Cool.
Well, you know, but I think that's what makes it work, is that the way Mark attacks, I was talking with Elvis about that when we were doing the last record, and the way that Mark attacks the strings is so intense, and that adds so much to the overall sound. And then, yeah, with the way I do it is completely different, but you put those two things together and it seems to work, you know, but it's nice having, you know, Mark and I have talked about this a number of times. It's cool having somebody do something that you don't do. If we both did the same thing, it would be redundant, you know? And so for us, that's a important part of the musical stew.
You know, that's a good point. Me and Myles, you know, people would think that me and Myles sit in a room and play guitar together all day. But I kind of think it's a smart thing to have him go down his rabbit hole and me go down mine, and not really compare notes too much. You know, if it's a big picture thing, of course, help one another out. But if I'm learning the same arpeggio thing Myles is learning, you're just going to hear both guys doing the same thing. So I think going down your own rabbit hole when you have two guitar players in the band is kind of a good thing. That's
a really good point, actually, that both of you made together. Yeah, collaboration, but keeping the differences, not meeting in the middle, just staying where you are.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And the thing that's interesting is that one of the most fascinating descriptions I read about Alter Bridge was on All Things Amazon. They said Alter Bridge, you know, for the last 16 years, Alter Bridge has successfully blurred the line between hard rock and heavy metal. And I thought that was a very astute observation, because what you two have said kind of confirms why that is indeed the truth, because of where Myles comes from, the the more classic rock side and Mark from the harder edge. Is that something you guys are conscious of, or just natural evolution, if you will?
I think it just happens naturally, but you know, and I wouldn't say that you know, I'm the heavy metal guy in the band and Myles is the classic guy in the band. Even Elvis said on this, he's like, I had no idea who wrote what coming into this record. I thought Myles wrote this, Mark. I thought you wrote this. So the more you work with somebody else, your lines kind of get mixed. You don't know who's doing what, because you start kind of you learn when you play with somebody else for so many years. You kind of learn their stylings, and those lines get blurred a little bit. Not as far as the guitar playing, but as far as the songwriting goes. So
Gotcha.
Also the fact that I love 70s soft rock, and I love my speed metal, and I love melodic stuff. And sometimes heavy metal isn't very melodic.
Right.
But I like to mix those worlds. And I think Myles is the same kind of guy. You know?
Gotcha.
Absolutely. We both love 70s soft rock. Something fierce.
So, and who would you say the ultimate 70s soft rock kings?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Little River Band, but I don't know if he falls under 70s soft rock. He was part of that whole FM radio movement, but I know Mark will agree with this. Jerry Rafferty. I'm one of the greatest songwriters.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with that at all. What a great songwriter. You're correct.
Absolutely.
I love Rod Stewart. I love the Climax Blues Band.
Oh.
Bobby Caldwell. Michael McDonald. There's so many. You could just turn on Yacht Rock Radio, and they're all
It's funny though, because you would never put the term yacht rock in with Alter Bridge, but you kind of just have, sir. And it makes sense now.
We should do an album of yacht rock covers.
I'm down. As long as I get to sing some of it with you.
You got it, brother. We're going to do it. It's going to be great.
Alter Bridge Yacht Rock. That would be... That's just from hearing you, like the passion you guys have with regards to that particular part of the genre, I think it would be a great record.
I love it. I would say Steely Dan's in there too, right?
Well, the Kings. I mean,
Right.
the Kings. Yeah.
Yeah, so talking about the softer side of things, one thing I really like about the new record, Walk the Sky, is there's some really cool keyboard parts. Some are very subtle, but they add mood and texture. Is that something you went in consciously thinking about, or did the keyboards evolve from the songs? What came first, the keyboard part or the riff, if that makes sense, where you've used those?
Well, on this record, me and Myles got on the phone, and you know, it seems like this happens every record. We try to put our heads together and say, how are we going to make this record different? And one of the elements we thought we would do different is to add some, you know, first it was this synthwave stuff. You know, it's the old school, when the synthesizers just came into being, they had this really cool, different sound than they have nowadays. It wasn't so polished. It was more eerie and atmospheric. And,
right.
And, so on, gosh, a few songs we used that kind of mentality to come up with songs like Godspeed and what's the other one that came from the past?
Pay No Mind.
Pay No Mind. Yeah.
That was the old title.
Yeah. So yeah, it was cool. You know, you're always trying to push yourself to write differently and not keep doing the same thing. So on my end of things, I just pulled up YouTube and had these non-chord progressions, just background atmospheric sounds to help me kind of push into a different direction. And that's how songs like Godspeed and that song, a few of them, 2 or 3 of them came together. Gotcha.
So you kind of used that as a creative bed on which to build.
Yes.
It was your pastry, and then you put your spices and stuff on top of it. If we carry on with our dumb cooking analogy. Now, what advice would you give to a band that has 2 guitars on making the most of the abilities and the differences that lie within such a structure?
I think you just hit on it. Don't be afraid to explore those differences and play on those differences, because you'll find that can be your strength. I feel like if you're doing the same thing, if you're playing the same sweep arpeggios or the same, fancy chord progressions, and having the same harmonic approach, it just becomes redundant. And so if you meet another guitar player that does something that you don't do, that could be a really beautiful thing. And learn how to, it takes time. Look, I mean, it's not like we got together and it was just an immediate, musical stew, so to speak. It was something where we had to experiment with the spices,
right,
and flavors until it was like, okay, this is what works for you. This is the template right here, and
gotcha.
then you move forward.
I think one exercise in writing, if anybody wanted to kind of write like we write, I think one thing they could try is take two guitars and tune them differently and come up with a song with two different tunings. Myles will.
Ooh.
I'll write a guitar part, and Myles will come in and play his guitar part, and he's in a different tuning than I am, but it has these different open strings. So the chord voicings are all, they fill a bigger bigger range, because, when you have one chord that has two open strings in it, another one that has a different two open strings in it, but the chord voicings together sound much bigger when, say I'm in open G and Myles is in open E or something, and we play it together, somehow it magically fits and sounds bigger.
So it's kind of a weird chord stacking thing. It's the same chord, but it's different by virtue of the inversion tuning. And also the
different
tuning.
Voices.
Yeah,
but like radically different voices.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really important one Mark just touched on, because that will make the voicing so massive,
right?
And it just creates this wall of sound that you'll think is being done with 8 guitars in a track, when really it's just a few,
Gotcha.
So that's a fun one.
And also, with regards to the two guitar thing that you touched on it earlier, Myles, making sure your tones complement each other but don't step on each other. Any advice with regards to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it was really helpful getting in the studio. When you can, it's one thing when you're in a room together, but if you can get an environment where you mic the cabinet or whatever you're using, if it's a Kemper or whatever, sit back in the studio environment and listen to the sonic landscape and figure out where to fill the holes in. So if you have one guy that has it like Mark, it's such a massive sound, I had to sit there and just think, okay, well, there's a lot of 4K here. There's a lot of tons of 100 hertz here. It's super. You can just feel that. It's the parts where you just feel. Where am I going to sit in that? It's like looking at a mountain range, and
right.
you want to take that mountain range and you want to flatten it out. So you'd say, okay, well, next to 4K, I'll put some 6K in here, which is, it's fun. It's hard. It takes time, and it's a lot of trial and error for me, many different amps and many different settings and many pickups. That was another one. One thing I learned, it was very important not to use the same pickup. And initially, I may have had some Tremonti pickups in some of the guitars. That was the wrong thing to do, because his pickups has a very signature sound.
Right.
So I ended up finally discovering the I think through my guitar tech suggests I try the Seymour Duncan custom, and that worked really well. So yeah, it's just experimenting more than anything and being patient.
Right. Do you ever find that when you're doing an overdub that you'll use a sound that maybe by itself sounds like it's insignificant, but when you put it into the sonic landscape, as you so aptly put it, that it becomes larger than life?
All the time. Yeah. Oftentimes the things you think are going to sound really great will then get lost in the mix.
Right.
It drives me crazy.
So I guess the takeaway is use your ears.
Absolutely.
What a concept.
And your heart. Use your heart and your ears.
Yeah, there you go.
True that.
Now, last but by no means least, actually, sorry, I lied. 2 questions. Myles, you've had the good fortune of, you're not only playing with Mark, who's a great guitar player, but you play with a guy with a top hat who's not bad. And you've also done some stuff with this English guy called Jimmy something. And how much of that rubs off, even if you're just singing, not playing guitar, how much of what they bring to the table has rubbed off on you, even though you might not realize it? Do you think they've had an impact on the way you approach the instrument or how you write just by...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, with Jimmy Page, I mean, he rubbed, not so much just from, because that was a very finite period of time that I spent with him, but just through growing up listening to Led Zeppelin. I mean, I would say Jimmy's probably the biggest influence on me as a guitar player. But in terms of standing in the same room and standing on stage with both Mark and with Slash, yeah, what they do is absolutely rubbed off. And I'm, I couldn't think of two guys I'd rather have, have their influence rub off on me. So it's been a really cool thing to be the singer, but yet a guitar, I guess I'm kind of one of these people who considers guitar his first love. I can sing, and that was mainly just a way to be able to express the songs, but I love playing guitar.
Right.
So, getting to hang out with dudes who are passionate about the instrument, and they both are on par with each other as far as their drive and how much they love to play, so, what you can hear in what they do. So yeah, it's definitely rubbed off on me.
Yeah, that's one thing that struck me from both interviewing. I had the good fortune over the last years to interview with both Mark and Slash, and they're both constantly pushing themselves. So I'm talking to you about Mark like he's not here. What still drives you, Mark, to do that? Because you've sold quite a few records. What makes you want to keep improving?
Every time you see somebody do something that you can't do, that excites you. It's just fun to try to tackle it. And I spend 80% of the time frustrated that I'm not there yet, and 20% of the time going, all right, just find the next thing. But I just get on a mission. I find something I really like, and I just sit down and try to play it a billion times until I have it. And sometimes I feel it's not the best approach. I think some of the best players are the guys who just sit down and just play.
Right.
I'm not one of those players. I'm one of the guys that kind of sits down and says, I have to tackle this thing and go after it. And then I just see some kid who hardly practices. He just plays for the fun of it, get it easily. So it's, I think there's two kinds of guitar players. I'm on the side that's more of a strict practicer. I wish I was more of just a, fun-loving kind of guy, just picks up the guitar and has fun with it. But I just want to learn as much as I can. Life's too short to not, try to keep on getting better.
Well put. And Myles, you're no slouch either. How hard is it for you to, what do you put in woodshedding wise to keep your chops up to where they should be, especially playing where they are, and to keep up with Mark? Because Alter Bridge's stuff is that's some pretty taxing stuff.
Yeah, it's not easy. Well, it depends. If you'd asked me that a few years ago, maybe an hour or two a day, but I feel like in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, I've rediscovered my obsession with the guitar. I feel like I did when I was 15. And so generally I get up in the morning and the first thing I do is I grab one of my guitars, and I'm usually, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours to start the day. And then there can be days when I don't ever leave the couch and I'm just playing all day long. So I think the guitar is I'm a little biased here, but I think it's the absolute perfect, it's just the perfect instrument. And it still brings me as much joy, as it did when I discovered it when I was a teenager. It's just, I feel really grateful. I don't know about you, Mark, and Nick, you as well. I mean, it's like, we're really lucky we get to play guitar, right?
No, I pinch myself sometimes.
Yeah. You take a guitar away from Myles on stage and he feels like he's naked. He doesn't know what to do.
He's grumpy.
Grumpy Myles.
Just watch the Alter Bridge Open Your Eyes video and see a man in mental pain. Anguish.
He's confused. What does he do with his hands?
Happy hands.
Talking of, talking of from like 2 or 3 hours on the couch to all day, how do you spend that time? Are you just noodling, or are you looking at something and working on it? Are you a disciplined guy, or you just mess around?
A lot of it's funny. I like to learn things. Instagram's an incredible tool now, because I follow all these amazing players that can do things that I can only dream of. And so I'll watch, maybe I'll stumble onto something, then I'll save that, and then I'll go back and I'll just try and work on it throughout the day. Or there might be I like to invent lines. Like I like to take patterns and shapes and then try and get a really good handle on them, which you just play over and over and over and over again. And recently, Mark actually turned me onto this. There's this, what's the name of that that series where the guy basically, it's for technique. It's the website is unlocking
Troy Grady.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
I've
once
just
Mark taught.
sorry.
Once Mark showed me that, he was like off to the races. I mean, I went back and he was watching him, you know, show how to play Eric Johnson lines and whatever. And I was like, oh man, if only this guy had come into my life, you know, 30 years ago.
You know,
it's amazing.
I think most of the struggle for me learning to play guitar was actually learning things right. And Troy Grady, a guy like Troy Grady, you can tell he's mastered the art of learning these parts and learning not only the correct note choice, but the correct upstroke, downstroke, economy picked, every single damn thing you could ever want to know about somebody's playing. And you could be playing something your whole life wrong and not know it. I've done that. I've wasted so many years playing things the wrong way. But when you find that excellent teacher who can teach you the things you really want to know, a lot of people just tab stuff out and run through it. But you really have to look at the right-hand stuff, and that's what Troy Grady does.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. I literally discovered him last week, and when he starts talking about the pick's trapped here, now it's escaped because it's above the plane, I'd never considered that.
Yeah.
And he's got that great camera work where you can see what the pick's doing relative to what he calls the string plane. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've got a lot of work to do. A lot.
Thank you, Troy. You're awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that to me, I guess, is the one thing about the guitar. You know, Myles, you said it earlier, it's like you're biased, but it's just an amazing instrument. And the one thing I've learned is the more I think I know, the less I realize I know. I know nothing, basically.
I think that's how every good guitar player thinks. You know, I think anybody who thinks they're great, they're not going to get any better. I think the people who are constantly insecure about their playing are the ones that are diving in and getting better and you know, opening their horizons.
So cool. So Instagram is a good thing after all.
Absolutely.
No, my phone is full of screenshots just to remind myself to go and check this guy out further. And one of them, a lot of the screenshots lately are Troy Grady. So
yeah,
great minds allegedly think alike. Well, gentlemen, I think we've got enough to write a small book. Thank you so much for taking the time and for giving us so many cool insights. And hopefully next time I see you guys, we'll be face-to-face without masks and both in your natural habitat of playing on stage. And Myles with a mic and a guitar.
Right on, brother.
So,
right on.
Folks, Myles and Mark, what a great discussion. I learned a lot and had fun. What a concept. We'll see you soon.